Hi guys, it's me, Chazza HD, and tonight welcome to the qualifying preview, the qualifying day, of course, tomorrow for the 2022 Hungarian Grand Prix. I hope you're all doing well after what's been not it's not been a dramatic day, let's say a Friday practice today in Hungary, a very hot and sunny day it was in Budapest, which is going to massively change by the looks of it tomorrow. But yeah, it's not been the most dramatic day, but it's been definitely in practice too a very interesting day. And we've definitely got some teams looking a bit quicker and some looking a bit slower than we expected coming into the weekend. And not necessarily in the midfield, but even at the very front of the field. We'll get into that, of course, in tonight's stream. And what we're going to get into in this stream is obviously looking at how the teams did today and predicting how realistically, based off what we've seen so far, how they'll do tomorrow. I will factor in the rain that we are almost certainly going to have tomorrow in Budapest, which will definitely affect, of course, the running tomorrow and affect, obviously, the pace of the cars, because the pace of the cars, the pecking order, does tend to be a lot different when the rain does fall. But we'll go through all the teams, look at how they did and how I think they'll probably do in qualifying. We'll get into the results of both sessions, practice 1 and practice 2, and also get into sector time data, the ideal lap in the dry for all of the teams, and we'll get into some stats through the night for qualifying for certain teams and what to look out for tomorrow. And for a couple teams, we'll get into upgrades as well, because there has been some more upgrades for this Grand Prix than I was expecting for the teams. Obviously, we know about the Haas upgrade, and I'll get into that later on, but there's also been some very important upgrades for Aston Martin and Alfa Romeo. And like I said, we'll get into that later in the stream. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. And no matter what time it is in your part of the world or where you're from, hopefully you're having the best day possibly you can be having at the moment, given whatever circumstances you are going through. But let's just get straight into it and start with the results of both practice sessions. So in practice 1, Carlos Sainz ended up quickest by 1/10 of a second from Max Verstappen in second. Charles Leclerc ended up in third, with Lando Norris in fourth. And that was a common theme, Norris being so quick in practice 2. And then you had George Russell 5th, Perez 6th, Hamilton in 7th place, Ricciardo 8th, Ocon 9th, and Alonso in 10th. And then the rest of the order being Vettel, Stroll, Gasly, Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen, Mick Schumacher, Robert Kubica, of course, who normally does Friday practice sessions, or practice 1 sessions, and then Nicholas Latifi at the very back. And then practice 2, we had a very interesting final finishing order that's going to make for, I think, a very exciting weekend. Let's get into that now. So Charles Leclerc ended up quickest on a 1:18.4, 0.2 of a second quicker than Lando Norris in the McLaren. And then you got Carlos Sainz just behind in 3rd place. Max Verstappen ended up in P4. Daniel Ricciardo ended up in P5. So McLaren, honestly, and we'll get more into this later in the stream, I think McLaren, certainly in qualifying trim, are quite possibly the 3rd quickest team this weekend. Again, we'll get more into that later in the stream. And then the rest of the top 10, it was Alonso, Vettel, very surprisingly up in P7, George Russell 8th, Sergio Perez 9th, Valtteri Bottas in 10th, and then Hamilton 11th, Zhou 12th, Ocon 13th, and then Stroll, Gasly, Magnussen, Schumacher, Latifi, Tsunoda, and Albon. But if we look at the dry running we've had so far, so in the dry, I would say Ferrari definitely, by no surprise by the way, have the best car. Red Bull, I would still say, are the 2nd quickest team, as I'll get into when I get into the sector time data. Red Bull were definitely not running their power unit in as high a mode as, say, Ferrari and McLaren were, so you can expect more tomorrow, even in the wet, from Red Bull. And then, yeah, I would say McLaren look to be the 3rd quickest team, certainly in qualifying trim. and they were very, very good today. The McLaren car looked very well hooked up to the track. And then after that, I think Mercedes can go quicker, but I think Mercedes are most likely probably the 4th fastest team. And then after that, you've probably got Alpine and then, say, Aston Martin, Alfa Romeo. So, yeah, very interesting field coming out of practice 2. And it's going to be, whether it rains or not tomorrow, it's going to be a very interesting session in Budapest. But anyway, let's come away from this and get into the teams. And, of course, we will start with Red Bull Racing. And yeah, compared to Ferrari, not that quick. Not really a surprise. We knew coming to this circuit that Max Verstappen and Red Bull would struggle over a single lap really to keep up with, say, Charles Leclerc and Ferrari. And yeah, no surprise that Verstappen was, I think, 0.3 of a second off Leclerc in practice 2. And I mean, if it's dry qualifying, then it really should be the same type of gap. And even in the wet, I think Leclerc and Ferrari in that car have a very good chance of being on pole position with a similar gap to Verstappen and the rest of the field. But yeah, Red Bull still looking okay. I still think they are going to be very competitive in qualifying. I don't think Ferrari are going to, obliterate everybody and absolutely destroy the rest of the field. Gotta say, though, Red Bull's race pace is not looking that good. We'll get more into that, obviously, on Sunday when we get into the race for proper. But, yeah, it's not looking great when it comes to race pace. But, yeah, qualifying pace is okay. It's about what I thought it would be at this point of the weekend. Red Bull do tend to sandbag quite a bit more than, say, Ferrari do. Because we always see a big improvement from Red Bull from Friday to Saturday. We saw that last year as well, so not really surprised that Red Bull are in the position they are in. The only thing really Red Bull have to worry about, again, is that lack of race pace they had on the longer runs. But in terms of qualifying, they're about where you would expect them to be. And if it does rain tomorrow, then even if Ferrari have the fastest car, because of how good Max Verstappen is in the rain, we cannot count him out for a pole position tomorrow in what will be very tricky conditions if it does rain as hard as the forecast may suggest. But yeah, Red Bull are absolutely fine. And if you are a Red Bull fan, don't be that concerned when it comes to qualifying, because I think Red Bull are absolutely fine at the moment. The only concern, I guess you could bring up when it comes to their qualifying pace or the grip of the car in qualifying is from the point of view of Sergio Perez, who was struggling with quite a bit of understeer with his car. So hopefully he can get that fixed for qualifying tomorrow. And hopefully when he goes out in practice 3 tomorrow lunchtime, the car feels a lot better for him than it did feel in practice 2. And hopefully his allergies are not playing up as much as they were in practice 2, because he came on the radio at some point in the session and was sneezing and coughing, which wasn't great. But yeah, let's hope he gets on top of that. But let's quickly, before we move on to Ferrari, let's get into the qualifying stats regarding Red Bull at the Hungaroring. So Max Verstappen does have a pole position here from the Hungaroring from 2019. A fantastic pole position it was, beating out just about the 2 Mercedes cars at the time of Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. Red Bull have taken pole in Hungary 3 times since 2010, not only in 2019, but also in 2010 and 2011. And also, Red Bull have taken 33% of pole positions on offer in 2022. They've not really, at any point this season, increased the amount of times they've been, getting onto pole position. It's just been 1 pole position in every, say, 3 races at best for them. So, yeah, not a great record. And to be honest, at the moment, I would say it's most likely that Ferrari are going to get pole position tomorrow, come rain or shine. But they'll definitely be in the fight, as they usually are. But now, let's get into the team from Maranello. And so far, so good. Pace is looking very good, and they definitely have the quickest car over a single lap in the dry. Will they have the same in qualifying? Maybe not with both cars, because Max Verstappen, like I said, he is so good in wet conditions. But we know also that Charles Leclerc is very good in wet conditions. And I think that Leclerc will be, in that Ferrari car, in the wet, just too good to beat. So I do think Leclerc is getting pole position tomorrow. The only thing that can stop him is another one of his very poor mistakes, or the Ferrari car having some sort of reliability problem. But if those two things don't happen, then I think you're looking at right here, the pole position man for Sunday's Hungarian Grand Prix. Pace looking, like I said, very good. And yeah, in all of the sectors, it does look as though Ferrari are pretty much, not massively quicker than Red Bull, but a tenth or two, or at least a tenth of a second, rather, quicker than Red Bull in all of the sectors, which is looking good for them. And yeah, the only thing really they've got to worry about, I think, when it comes to qualifying is them tripping over themselves, or Max Verstappen producing an almighty lap in wet conditions, really, to stop them getting pole position. But to be honest, there's not that much to say when it comes to Ferrari, because, and not really with Red Bull either, because what the pace we've seen so far from both teams is absolutely as expected. There's no surprises that we are seeing with Ferrari and Red Bull here. When we get into Mercedes and McLaren, though, that's when the surprises really begin. But yeah, can't really say that much about their day today. Leclerc did have some sort of problem, I think, with the cooling of his car at the end of practice too, and then he tried to come out again, but then accidentally crashed. Well, not crashed, I think it's a bit too dramatic of a thing to say, but he hit one of the front jacks that was just a bit in the way of him coming out of his garage. But that was a silly moment, but he got going again and did some pretty good lap times on heavier fuel in the long runs, and Ferrari looking very good when it comes to that. But what about Ferrari's historical data when it comes to qualifying in Hungary? Well, Charles Leclerc has never taken a pole position at the Hungaroring. To be honest, he's never really had the opportunity to do so. He qualified 5th here in 2019, and then in 2020 was 6th, and in 2021, I think was like 8th or 9th on the grid. He's never really had the chance to be on pole position. Ferrari's last pole position in Hungary was in 2017 with Sebastian Vettel. Obviously, that weekend, they had a 1-2 in qualifying and a 1-2 in the race. And that has to be the aim this weekend for them. At least they need to get a win this weekend for their morale rather than the championship. And obviously, as we know this season, Ferrari are the team for qualifying. They have taken 66% of pole positions on offer so far this season. And like I said, they are the team when it comes to qualifying in 2022. And I don't see that really changing that dramatically in qualifying tomorrow. But now, let's get into the Mercedes team. And then once I'm done with Mercedes, what we're going to do is then get into the sector time data and the ideal lap data as well. That really does point to a very interesting qualifying session coming up for us tomorrow. But let's get into Mercedes now. And oh my god, they are bad. I didn't think they would be like properly close to Ferrari and Red Bull over a single lap. Like I said in my preview last night, I thought they would be probably about half a second off the pace of Ferrari, and then probably another couple tenths off the pace of, say, Max Verstappen. But yeah, they're even slower than that. They look to be almost, or pretty much, a second off the pace of Ferrari, and quite a bit behind Red Bull as well. And not just Red Bull, but quite a bit behind McLaren, who look very quick. Obviously, their new upgrades working very well for them. We'll get more into that when we get to McLaren. But Mercedes look terrible. George Russell in practice 2 was complaining all session long about the grip of the car, said the rear end was terrible, and also said that in turn 1, he couldn't go through turn 1 without locking, which was very bad for him because obviously if you're locking up constantly into one corner all the time, you're damaging the tyres, which hurts you for your lap, and that is obviously losing time in that corner as well. So, yeah, George Russell was very unhappy with the grip of his Mercedes car. And Lewis Hamilton, even though Hamilton was on a quick lap or a quicker lap on the soft compound tyres towards the end of the single lap runs, wasn't really going that quick in his Mercedes either. And we know Lewis Hamilton is very quick here. And when we got onto the long runs, we saw the Mercedes car plenty of times running wide on the exit of turn 4 and looking pretty bad with the grip of its car. And the reason Mercedes are so slow are 2 reasons that I can clearly see. One, the reason they've had so commonly this season, not the reason they had, the problem they've had so commonly this season is, or has been, not being able to fire their tyres up properly. And we've seen that today clearly because the Mercedes car just not really able, in that first sector especially, to really get the tyres fired up to get any real good mechanical grip going through that first sector, which is why in the first sector, I mean, you'll see the sector time data in a moment. Their first sector times weren't actually that bad compared to Ferrari and Red Bull, but compared to McLaren, they were actually quite far off. But yeah, they just can't fire the tyres up enough to get enough or as much pace out of the car as what is there. But secondly, a big problem we have seen with the Mercedes car really since the Monaco Grand Prix, and it was a big reason also why they were so slow in Baku a couple months ago. This Mercedes car has absolutely no mechanical grip. The only grip they have is aerodynamic at high speed in high speed corners. In the slow speed corners, this car looks terrible. I remember seeing one of Lewis Hamilton's onboards on one of his laps in practice too. The rear end and the whole car, front and rear end, through, I think, was it turn 13, the penultimate corner, it looked terrible. It looked undrivable at times. And even in turn 12, looking very sluggish with both drivers, the Mercedes car was. And I've already mentioned the problems that they had at turn 1 and also at turn 4. When turn 4 is a faster corner, but they were still having problems there. But yeah, in the slow and even medium speed corners, this Mercedes car really handling very, very poorly. And because they have, such a lack of mechanical grip, obviously if it does rain tomorrow, you need to have a lot of mechanical grip to be fast in the wet with your car. Sometimes, yes, a great driver can override that with their own great performance and skill in wet conditions. But if your car doesn't have a lot of mechanical grip, then in the wet, you are going to suffer quite a bit. That's why we saw with Mercedes at Silverstone, why they were so poor in the wet qualifying there, where they qualified, I think, was it 6th and 8th? When they were looking in the dry to be 3rd and 4th even in a dry single lap session, if that did happen at Silverstone. So, yeah, Mercedes are in big trouble. They are not going to be anywhere near Ferrari and Red Bull in qualifying, whether it's dry or wet. But if it is wet, which it is expected to be, I don't think they'll be even as quick as McLaren. I think Mercedes will be kind of lucky to get both cars in the top 10 tomorrow. They're looking that bad. I'm very disappointed to see this lack of pace. I mean, I think on race day, they'll be fine to a certain extent. We will see more pace from them. But yeah, when it comes to qualifying, they are looking as though they are in big, big trouble, especially if it does rain. And I think the chance of rain at the moment for tomorrow is 80%. So yeah, not looking good for Mercedes. And if you are a Mercedes fan, just brace yourself for tomorrow because it's going to be a very bad day in qualifying. I don't really see, unless 2 or 3 drivers have problems or crash or something like that, I just don't see how Mercedes can really get that good of a result in qualifying tomorrow. But before we go on to McLaren, let me quickly get into a couple more things. Let me quickly get into some stats, historical data, obviously, regarding Mercedes at the Hungaroring in qualifying. Despite their lack of pace, they do have a very good history around here, and so does Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton has taken pole position 8 times at the Hungaroring, and Mercedes have taken pole position 7 times in Hungary since 2013. Obviously, 2013, that year at this Grand Prix, was Lewis Hamilton's first win for the Mercedes team, and obviously since then has not looked back. And Mercedes' last pole position in Formula 1 was in Saudi Arabia in 2021. But despite the great history Mercedes have had here in Hungary in the past, this weekend, that is going to be pretty different. They're going to be pretty poor tomorrow. And before, like I said, before we get on to McLaren, let me now get on to the sector time data from practice 2, really to look at just where Mercedes are losing so much pace and just the differences between all of the cars. And here we go. By the way, again, credit to Lights Out F1 blog. Make sure to check out the Lights Out blog website. You can see there on the very bottom, lightsoutblog.com. And yeah, let's get into this data. So, comparing Ferrari and Red Bull, Sector 1, I think, does prove that Red Bull are definitely saving on power, because in Sector 1, in say more competitive engine mode, Red Bull would be probably right there with Mercedes, if not a tenth of a second quicker than Mercedes in Sector 1. So Red Bull definitely not using as much power today as they could. Sector 2, Ferrari, no surprise, they're about a quarter of a second quicker than Red Bull. I've got to say though, Red Bull's pace in the final sector, very surprising and also very encouraging, because I normally would expect this season Ferrari to have, say, the biggest advantage over Red Bull in slower speed corners. But in Sector 3, which is the slowest part of the circuit, Red Bull right on the pace of Ferrari. So looking very good for Red Bull. And like I said, I think they will be Red Bull in a very good position tomorrow still to get pole position. I still expect Ferrari to get pole. I think they are definitely the favourites for pole position, but Red Bull, once they turn the wick up, they're going to be right on the pace with them. So it's going to be a great battle tomorrow in the wet between Leclerc and Max Verstappen. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see tomorrow. And then looking at Mercedes, so Sector 1, got to say, surprising that they're actually quicker than Ferrari, but that probably does point to Ferrari also not using as much power today for 2 reasons. One, reliability that we know they struggle with, and secondly, they don't need to use as much power as the midfield teams, because Ferrari know they're going to be at the very front of the field tomorrow no matter what. But then in Sector 2, look at the amount of pace that Mercedes are losing. 7 tenths of a second pretty much to the Ferrari team. That is an enormous amount of time to be losing in, 27.5 seconds. That is, yeah, terrible for them. Not even on the same, not even on the same pace, not only as McLaren, but nowhere near Alpine and Alfa Romeo, you can see in Sector 2, who are 3rd and 4th. Just, yeah, very embarrassing for the Mercedes team. And then in Sector 3, obviously the Sector 3 times are going to be very close between all of the teams, because it is the shortest sector, and it's only 3 corners. But even in Sector 3, they're losing, compared to Ferrari and Red Bull, a tenth of a second, and pretty much a tenth of a second almost to McLaren. So, yeah, Mercedes really everywhere, compared to McLaren, are losing quite a bit of pace. In Sector 1, McLaren 2 tenths quicker, and then another 2 tenths quicker in Sector 2, and then about 0.08 to a tenth of a second quicker in Sector 3. So McLaren, you can see with the ideal lap, half a second is the predicted ideal lap on the far right. Just embarrassing for the Mercedes team. But from McLaren's point of view, obviously we'll get more into why McLaren are so quick this weekend. But this upgrade for McLaren clearly working, because in Sector 1, where, say, straight line speed would matter the most, they are not losing as much time as they would have done probably before their upgrade that they brought to the French Grand Prix last weekend. And we saw in the data from qualifying last weekend that their straight line speed definitely improved quite a bit on what it was before. So that's helping their Sector 1 pace. And the great thing about McLaren, especially with them bringing this upgrade, and we saw this especially in Monaco, the McLaren car in the corners is a very good car. I mean, it's not as good as the Ferrari and the Red Bull car, but it is a very good car in the corners. It doesn't really have a weakness in slow corners, medium speed corners, or high speed corners. In all of those corners, they're quick. Their Achilles heel this season has been straight line speed. Obviously, at this track, straight line speed doesn't really matter at all. But with that straight line speed being improved by, say, 1/10 of a second, it has helped. But with this upgrade also helping their, the amount of downforce they have, you can see, compared to Mercedes, they are quite clearly much quicker. When Mercedes, Mercedes do well in the high-speed corners, but in the medium and slow-speed corners, we know Mercedes lack quite a bit of mechanical grip. McLaren not only have good mechanical grip, but have good aerodynamic grip. And that is why McLaren are so quick around this track, and is why they're so quick compared to Mercedes. And I reckon tomorrow a top 3 for McLaren is possible. If it's dry, I'd probably say a 4th place would be the highest they could get, because I think the top 3 in dry conditions in qualifying, if it was dry, would be Leclerc, Verstappen, Sainz. But if it's wet, Lando Norris not only probably could be in the top 3, if he's got really good pace, you never know, he could be contending for pole position. Of course, in Russia last year, Lando got pole position in the wet but drying conditions last year. So we know he's very good in wet conditions. We saw that at Silverstone, where Lando outqualified both Mercedes cars in 5th place at Silverstone. We know the McLaren car is quick in the wet, and we know Norris is very quick in the wet. And given the pace and the grip we're seeing from McLaren in all of the sectors, especially compared to Mercedes, I think McLaren, whether it rains or it's dry, will be absolutely fine tomorrow, and they'll be really just as quick as they've been today. The only difference will be that you can see on the ideal lap on the far right that Red Bull are behind McLaren. Tomorrow that will be different. Red Bull will be ahead. Ferrari will probably pull ahead slightly from McLaren, but I think McLaren, given what I've seen today and given how poor the Mercedes car looks, and I don't think they're going to drastically improve on that overnight, because it looks to be quite a lot of problems with that car. I think McLaren, definitely in qualifying trim, I'm not sure about the race, but definitely in qualifying trim, wet or dry, I think have the 3rd quickest car. Let me know in the chat, do you think McLaren have the 3rd fastest car from what we've seen today? And do you think McLaren could, with Lando Norris, fight for pole position possibly tomorrow in qualifying if it does rain? And let me know also how you think Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes are going to get on in qualifying, come rain or shine. But talking of McLaren, we'll get on to them now. And yeah, what a day McLaren have had. Lando Norris was up in 4th place in practice 1, and then in practice 2 was 2nd, and only 0.2 of a second off the pace of Charles Leclerc. And I think what is real confirmation that McLaren are very quick this weekend is the pace, actually, of Daniel Ricciardo. Because Ricciardo in practice 1 was in 8th, and then in practice 2, he improved to 5th place. So McLaren definitely overall have a very fast car, and Ricciardo was only a couple tenths of a second off his teammate in practice 2, which is about the gap you would expect or hope it would be at worst between Norris and Ricciardo in or over a single lap. But yeah, these upgrades working very well. Obviously, the new side pod design they've gone for, a lot more like the Red Bull side pod, and it's definitely improved the pace of this car. I mean, I said after the French Grand Prix, I said, even though they didn't get a great result there, the pace in qualifying was very good, and the pace of the car definitely has improved quite a bit with this new upgrade, and that coming into this race, they would definitely be quite quick, and they would have for sure, I mean, I said this last night as well, that they would have for sure the quickest car out of the midfield. And I guess you'd have to put Mercedes as a midfield team for this weekend at the moment, because McLaren looking for sure quicker than the Mercedes team, certainly over a single lap. Great to see from McLaren, and like I said, if it does rain, I actually think that'll play more into McLaren's hands than it will Mercedes, because like I said before, in the wet you do need quite a lot of mechanical grip. Mercedes don't have a lot of that, McLaren do, so that'll play a lot into the hands of McLaren. And we've seen this season that McLaren have had in the wet sessions with Lando Norris in, I think, 2 of the 3 wet qualifying sessions this season. Lando Norris has been very, very quick in that McLaren car. Was 3rd at Imola and then 5th at Silverstone. And then I think in Canada, Norris had a car problem, but Ricciardo still ended up in the top 10 in 9th or 10th place. So Norris probably could have got in the top 5 or 6 in Canada had his car been working for him. So if you're a McLaren fan, don't go too over the top with expectations, but be very excited for what is going to happen tomorrow, because I think there's going to be a very good chance for McLaren to get a very good grid position for the Hungarian Grand Prix. And if Mercedes have other cars in between them and McLaren, say an Alpine and an Aston Martin, who are also looking pretty quick, then that could really help McLaren in the race, because obviously overtaking in Hungary is pretty hard. Mercedes don't have an absolute ton of straight line speed, so if there are cars in between McLaren and Mercedes on the grid, then McLaren could end up finishing 5th and 6th, 4th and 5th, something like that on race day, if they can get a really good qualifying result with both cars. So look out for McLaren tomorrow. They are the team, I think, undoubtedly to watch in qualifying. But guys, let me know again in the chat, how do you think Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes and McLaren will do in qualifying tomorrow? And with the data I showed, how do you think that'll play out tomorrow? I have actually seen that Josiah has said in the chat that this isn't representative at all, though, as it's going to be wet tomorrow. That is not actually true. I mean, it's kind of true, but it's not fully true. Because again, this track, obviously in the wet, you do need a lot of grip. And obviously this track, you're running high aero anyway. So it actually will, to a certain extent, be kind of the pace of the cars tomorrow in wet conditions. So I wouldn't say it's not representative at all. I mean, if it was if this was Friday practice at Monza and then it was going to be wet on qualifying day, then I would agree. But yeah, I think given they're already running high downforce of teams, it'll play out tomorrow in a similar way. Yeah, let me know in the chat what you think is going to happen in regards to those top teams tomorrow in qualifying. Just want to let you guys know, especially if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because tomorrow I will be live at 11:45 a.m. UK time for practice 3, and then I'll be live all the way through until 4:30 p.m. after qualifying finishes. So from 11:45 a.m. till 1 p.m. will be me covering practice 3. Then from 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. UK time will be me doing the build-up to qualifying itself. Qualifying is from 3 p.m. till 4 p.m. UK time, And then for about half an hour after the session finishes, which could be a long session, I will be doing a reaction to what's happened in qualifying. So make sure, guys, to join me for that tomorrow. And if you are new to the channel, again, don't forget to subscribe for that content coming up. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And for everyone watching, don't forget to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. But there's not an absolute ton of comments in the chat, so I'll just quickly go through them now. Great to see you all here. Sparky Pete says P1 and P2 even more have been a nightmare for Mercedes. I don't know what happens if it rains tomorrow. They'll be hurting Sunday. Mercedes cars today couldn't handle any more power. Will be a fun race in some ways in the midfield nightmare scenarios. I don't think power is the reason Mercedes was so slow today. But yeah, Mercedes are in trouble. There is no doubt about it. And there will be a lot of homework tonight to do for the mechanics, engineers, drivers going into qualifying tomorrow, because it's most likely going to be a very tough day at the office. Sparky Pete says, unfortunately, yes, McLaren is third fastest in a single lap. Mercedes 4 and 6. Lando will probably get 5th, in my opinion. Well, if you think Mercedes are going to get 4th and 6th, then I'm not sure how you would also say McLaren are third fastest over a single lap. Yeah, not quite sure about that. G Walker says, I feel Ferrari will be in top form and get pole and certainly be challenged by McLaren Red Bull. As Sparky Pete says, Ferrari will win qualifying, but P2 and P3 for the race if they don't mess up. And those are all the comments in the chat. But make sure, for everyone watching, to keep your comments coming as the stream goes on. One thing I did forget to do in regards to McLaren was look at their historical data when it comes to qualifying in Hungary. So let's get into that now. Lando Norris's best qualifying result in Hungary is 6th from 2021. Had a great start, obviously, last year to the race. Got up to 3rd, I think it was, or 2nd. And then Valtteri Bottas happened, which was a shame for Norris. McLaren's last pole position in Formula 1 was in Russia in 2021, where Lando got an amazing pole and really deserved to win that Grand Prix had it not been for the rain coming at the very end of the race. But just didn't make the right decision. He did in the end. And also McLaren, just for remembrance sake, if McLaren can contend for pole position tomorrow in the wet, McLaren's last pole position in Hungary was in 2012 with Lewis Hamilton, 10 years ago. And that weekend, not only did they get pole, but Lewis Hamilton won the Hungarian Grand Prix. So, yeah, good omens for McLaren from 10 years ago. And they've always been, even when they were very poor in the McLaren Honda days between 2015 and 2017, and even in 2018, obviously, where they were very bad, they've always had good results here in Hungary. So it's always been a pretty good racetrack for the McLaren team. And even when they were a front-running team consistently, this has been pretty good for them, as they won here back in, 2011, 2009, 2008, 2007, 2005, and even back in the early 2000s and the 90s as well. So it's always been one of McLaren's best Grand Prix on the calendar, really, since it came on the calendar in 1986. So, yeah, always a good place, this place, for McLaren. But we'll come back to this, because obviously we're now going to go on to the rest of the midfield. So, in the dry, or even in the wet, I would say the pecking order for the top 4 is Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, in that order. For the rest of the field, though, it is looking very exciting. So, Alpine, we'll start with them, obviously, because they are the 4th place team in the championship, and they are competing obviously very hard with McLaren, the 4th in the championship. Sector 1 and Sector 2, Alpine look pretty competitive, about where you would think they would be in those sectors. But Sector 3, losing a lot of pace. So, yeah, not really any good slow speed performance there for the Alpine team, because if they were lapping about, say, a tenth of a second quicker in that sector, then they would be probably seriously on the pace of Mercedes tomorrow. I do think Mercedes will improve their pace tomorrow, but I still just don't think it'll be as good as McLaren. But Alpine, they've also got the potential to be right there with Mercedes, if not quicker, but they just need to improve their pace in the final sector. But I would say that the Alpine are probably the 5th fastest team this weekend, which is not really that big of a surprise, as I already predicted that for for the weekend. And then after that, it looks as though, very surprisingly, it is going to be Aston Martin as the 6th quickest team. Now, Aston Martin, we'll get onto later, brought a new rear wing to this Grand Prix that has been also questioned as to whether it's actually legal or not. We'll get into that later, as I said. But it's clearly improving their pace in the slow and medium speed corners, and the upgrade, the new rear wing, is reportedly not just giving them more downforce, but also reducing drag. I remember saying this last weekend when I looked at the data from qualifying with Aston Martin, and pointing to just, again, how slow they were in the speed traps. But with the speed traps, they were the slowest team pretty much. But it seems as though they've improved upon that, because in Sector 1, I reckon with the more drag they had before this weekend, they probably would have been where about Haas and Williams were in Sector 1, which would have seen them being consistently outside of the top 10, I think, with both cars. But they've definitely reduced the drag on that Aston Martin car, as they've done a very good Sector 1 time there. The only problem is that they are still lacking quite a lot of downforce with the middle sector, as they are one of the slowest teams on the grid. And yeah, 7.5 tenths off Ferrari, and even compared to Alpine and Alfa Romeo, they're 3.5 tenths off the pace of those teams as well. So still got a bit to do with the rear downforce of the car, but when it comes to the slow speed corner performance, Aston Martin definitely doing very well. They're pretty much on the pace of Mercedes in Sector 1 and Sector 3. It's just Sector 2 where they're losing out compared to the Mercedes team, and really to other teams in the upper midfield, such as McLaren and Alpine. But Aston Martin, in wet conditions, obviously the corners get slower, so if they can keep up that good slow speed performance, then I think the rain would probably be a great thing for them, especially with their two drivers, Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll, two drivers who we know in wet conditions are very, very good. So look out tomorrow for Aston Martin, because I think they could cause a big surprise. And then after that, looks as though Alfa Romeo, with their new their new floor. They also have a new upgrade, again, to the floor. Looks as though they've not really improved their pace, because they are about where I expected them to be for this weekend. And they're actually lower down the pecking order than I expected them to be, because of Aston Martin's improvement. So, yeah, Alfa Romeo looking okay, nothing special. One thing, though, very interesting to note, and very bad to note, I guess you could say, is Haas and their lack of pace. Obviously, they brought a big new upgrade, and this upgrade was basically them copying the Ferrari side pod engine cover and, rear end of the Ferrari car design for 2022. And from what we have seen so far, it does not seem as it really has done anything for the pace of their car. So, yeah. We'll see tomorrow whether they do improve, but looking at the moment, doesn't look as though it's actually improved their car. And then AlphaTauri looking very bad. I don't think they'll really improve tomorrow, and Williams looking as though they are the slowest team, which I'm a bit surprised at the gap between them and the midfield. They need to be a bit closer than not 1.8 seconds, but a bit closer than 0.6 of a second that they are off, say, Haas and AlphaTauri just ahead of them. But the overall pecking order, before we go into the teams and how they really did, the overall pecking order, I would say, for the whole field is, for the wet, I would say it is Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin, Alpine, Alfa Romeo, and then probably Haas, AlphaTauri, Williams. I think in wet conditions, that will be what the pecking order is. And then in the dry, it's effectively going to be the same, except just swap Aston Martin and Alpine around. I think Alpine have better pace in the dry with their car than they do in the wet. But then again, they've got Fernando Alonso in their car, who does tend to outperform his machinery quite a bit. But yeah, let's crack on with the rest of the teams and go on to the Alpine team. And definitely is saddening, I guess you could say, for Alpine this weekend that McLaren, their main rivals in the championship, appear to be so quick, because even though Alpine have some pretty decent pace, at least in dry conditions, Alpine not really anywhere near the McLaren team, which obviously is what they cannot do if they are going to finish fourth in the championship. I mean, even in France, where McLaren in qualifying were quicker, Alpine were not too far behind in qualifying, only a tenth or two, or a couple tenths of a second rather, in qualifying, I think, compared to Norris and Alonso, I believe it was, in qualifying. And even Esteban Ocon was right behind Daniel Ricciardo when they were both knocked out in Q2. But here in Hungary, McLaren are not just quicker, they are miles quicker than Alpine by at least half a second. So yeah, not good for Alpine. And what they've got to do, not only in qualifying but the race, is essentially damage limitation. Just try and get the best result they can and hope that McLaren don't quite maximise their performance in qualifying or the race and get the best result they possibly could, because there's nothing they can do, I don't think, to stop McLaren unless Fernando Alonso continues his amazing performance this season and performances and somehow puts his Alpine right up there with the McLarens in qualifying or even the race, which I just do not see happening tomorrow or even on Sunday. I think Alonso most likely will end up qualifying 7th or 8th tomorrow, whether it's wet or dry. I think he'll be very quick. But yeah, just damage limitation because of the McLarens having such quick pace is what Alpine have got to do. And even though McLaren do have this very good pace, I think what they've got to remember, Alpine, is that this pace for McLaren will not translate to every track remaining for the rest of the season. Their upgrades have worked for McLaren, but it isn't going to be, they're not going to be that much quicker than they were previously at every track. They'll be probably this quick at tracks like this one, the Singapore track, maybe the Mexico track in Mexico City, maybe the Circuit of America's track as well, and Abu Dhabi as well. Tracks like that is where McLaren and this new upgrade, where they'll be very, very quick. But at the next track on the calendar after the summer break, Spa, I don't think that this upgrade for McLaren will actually have as much effect for them as it will at a track like this, the Hungaroring. So no need to panic also for the Alpine team. Just got to crack on with the job, get the best result they can, and hope that they don't lose too many points to McLaren this weekend. But yeah, if they could get Alonso into 7th or 8th, that would be, I think, a pretty good result for them in qualifying. And that's about where I think they'll be in qualifying as well. Next up, we'll go on to Alfa Romeo. Obviously on screen, this is Robert Kubica, who was in the car in practice 1. And Alfa Romeo do have a new floor on their car. Here is the new floor. This thing in the middle is a camera to just film for the team what is going on this area of the car. But it doesn't seem as though this new floor has really given them that much pace. If it has, it's only given them probably a tenth of a second. It's not really made that big of a difference. And this is probably going to be one of Alfa Romeo's last upgrades of 2022. So, yeah, not great that it's not really giving them much of an improvement for this weekend. It is a shame for Alfa Romeo, but that's the way it is. Obviously, Aston Martin have made a massive improvement on their pace, and I think tomorrow both Alfa Romeos will end up outside of the top 10 for sure. But if they could get both cars into Q2, I think that would be a decent result, because they should have some decent pace for Sunday. We know they will always have some good race pace. I know in France they weren't that quick, but they did have a couple little issues during the race that definitely affected their performance. But we'll move on from them. Not really that eventful of a day for them. And go on to the Haas F1 team. And yeah, Haas have not had a good day, because Mick Schumacher, you can see on your screen, does not have the upgrade on his car. Kevin Magnussen does, but the pace doesn't really seem to be that different. So you can see Mick Schumacher's car here. Look around the side pod area to see the biggest difference in the car, in the way it looks. And there you can see the difference. So it really does drop down a lot more from the side pod than it did with the old Haas car. But we can see some other pictures here. We go on to this, and if you look at this side pod, it looks very similar to the Ferrari side pod. If we go back to Ferrari quickly, here, if you look at this side pod of the Ferrari, it is very similar. If we go back again, yeah, it's a very similar side pod and engine cover compared to the Ferrari team, and that is why this Haas car has been described as a quote white Ferrari. And if it is a white Ferrari, you would expect it to be quite a bit quicker around a track like this. But so far, we've not seen any pace from them, which is a shame. Hopefully, they were just doing, but collecting, say, data on the upgrades rather than really pushing, because it would be disappointing, really disappointing, if Haas F1 ended up not really improving with this upgrade. Because if they, if this upgrade is quite a big upgrade at this point of the season, to be honest, for Haas F1, if it really worked for them, it should put them into a position as a team where they are able to probably finish 6th in the Constructors' Championship. But we just haven't seen anything at the moment to suggest that Haas F1 will be that quick with this upgrade. But I really hope that that is not the case tomorrow, when they really start to push for real. But we'll move on with the rest of the teams. And we'll go on to AlphaTauri. Not that much to say with them. The pace of their car, very, very poor. They obviously brought an upgrade to the French Grand Prix, which Franz Tost said worked, but clearly has not improved on the deficiencies of the AlphaTauri car, being in the, I think, the middle sector especially, is where the AlphaTauri car is pretty poor. Let me just actually quickly look again. And actually, no, the middle sector are actually pretty good. It's Sector 1 and Sector 3. So maybe just running a bit too much drag in Sector 1. And then Sector 3, yeah, the slow speed corners, they seem to be pretty slow in. The slowest team in Sector 1. So, yeah, not good at all for them. But, yeah, AlphaTauri, I know Pierre Gasly has a very good record in qualifying here, but I don't think they'll be anywhere near the top 10 tomorrow. And now we'll go on to Aston Martin. And coming into this weekend, obviously Sebastian Vettel has announced his retirement for the end of this season. Very sad news. But In terms of this weekend and what can they do results-wise, we were not expecting anything from them because they've been really poor in the last 2 or 3 races. I know last weekend they scored points of Lance Stroll, but it was a bit of a surprise that they actually did that because nobody was expecting them to be quick. We expected them to be quite slow. But Aston Martin have brought an upgrade this weekend that has seemingly improved the pace of the car quite a bit. And certainly will improve their pace at higher downforce tracks. Now let's get into the upgrade. So this is the upgrade to the rear wing end plate. You can see here with the curvatures. And this curvature you can see right here, first thing you can see before you get to the actual main part of the rear wing itself, has caused a bit of controversy because even though the FIA have said that it is not illegal, there has been a lot of chatter that it is not within the spirit of the regulations. Obviously, we've heard of that plenty of times, and we heard that at the start of the season with what you call it, with the Mercedes side pod design, that it wasn't within the spirit of the regulations. And I'm just going to quickly look on Twitter because what was I going to look on Twitter for? I was going to look to see or read out because I found a tweet that actually described what the rear wing does, or a couple tweets. So from Craig Scarborough, he says that Aston Martin's new end plate extension beats the rules that were aimed to reduce the rear wing's effectiveness, interpreting the radius rules and finding a loophole to create a fence that maintains high pressure above the wing for more downforce, which you can see on this Aston Martin. Now, and it's been nicknamed the armchair rear wing. It has the Aston Martin. Let me just quickly find this tweet, though, that I saw earlier, because it was a good one in talking about. Here you go. So, obviously, for the 2022 regulations, what do you call it? The rear wings, in terms of their configuration and design, were changed. And the reason is to improve the car behind being able to follow. So they improved the rear wing design in being able to allow the car behind to get closer than it would do, say, previously, say last year. I'll quickly go on to this and go on to this tweet, and it also shows this part of the rear wing that I just showed on screen, and you can see another bit there. And this tweet, I think, perfectly sums up the situation. So Aston Martin found a grey area in the technical regulations. The rules state that the wing surface needs to be over a minimum curvature radius. So clearly Aston Martin have found a grey area to exploit and have been able to make a legal design. And then it says a strange shape of rear wing end plate, but it should help to generate downforce and reduce drag. And these pictures are from Albert Fabrega, who is a very good journalist. So what this upgrade to the rear wing does is, creates more downforce, reduces drag. But what this rear wing will be is it will be the rear wing that Aston Martin will run at high downforce tracks. Obviously, they're not going to run this rear wing at Monza or Spa or Suzuka. I mean, maybe they will at Suzuka, but Suzuka is a pretty high-speed circuit. But at high downforce tracks, this will be the Aston Martin rear wing. Now, with this rear wing design that will create more outwash, again, some people have said that it is not within the spirit of the regulations, but the FIA have said that it is legal. We'll see, obviously, tomorrow and on Sunday how well it works for them. It should work pretty well in qualifying for them, and then the race should give them some decent performance. But if it does work and the FIA say, no, it's absolutely legal, then what I think we'll see is probably, and Ted Kravitz said this on the Sky F1 broadcast in practice too, what we'll probably see by the Singapore Grand Prix, the next real high downforce track. I mean, you could say Zandvoort is a high downforce track, but I don't think they'll have other teams this kind of design ready by then. But if other teams decide to copy it, then you'll see a lot more teams have that type of design by, say, the Singapore Grand Prix, which is in the first weekend of October. Was it the 1st and 2nd of October? I think is the Saturday and Sunday for the Singapore Grand Prix. So, yeah, if the FIA decide absolutely that it's legal, or that it is legal, not illegal, then, yeah, expect to see it on more cars. And it's definitely improved the pace and grip of the Aston Martin, which is good news because Aston Martin have had a pretty bad season. Obviously, they did improve their results with their B car they brought to the Spanish Grand Prix. The revised version, though, from Silverstone, clearly did not work because in the last couple of races, they've not been as quick as they were in May or June. But definitely quicker with this new rear wing and definitely a lot more in the action in the midfield, at the upper parts of the midfield, than they would have been without this upgrade. And I think tomorrow in wet conditions, especially with the drivers they have, I think Aston Martin will be very competitive. And I'm gonna call it now. I think Sebastian Vettel will be in the top 10 tomorrow in qualifying, and I think Lance Stroll won't be as far down in qualifying as he normally is. I think probably he'll be in like 13th or 14th place because I think the Aston Martin in the wet will do pretty well with this new upgrade, generating more downforce for them. And thankfully, for dry conditions, cutting some drag, which, like I said earlier, was a big problem for them earlier in the season and has been really all season long. So good to see them making improvements when it comes to that. And finally, we'll go on to Williams. Despite their new upgrade they brought a few races ago, which is basically a completely new car, Williams aren't really that quick this weekend. And unless Albon can pull out an amazing lap in wet conditions tomorrow, then I don't see Williams doing anything this weekend. So I think they will be at the very back of field. Let's go back onto some pictures up front, and actually we'll go back onto the Ferrari pictures here, because the Ferrari car is the despite them being an absolute clown or circus of a team, they are have the sexiest looking car on the grid. Let me know, guys, in the chat, how do you think those midfield teams will do this weekend? And let me know also, with the upgrades for Aston Martin and Haas especially, how do you think that'll affect them this weekend in a positive or negative way? Let me know in the live chat or the comment section down below. But what was I going to say? Yeah, the Ferrari car, clearly the sexiest car on the grid. There is no doubt about that. If looks could win championships, Ferrari would have won the championship already, as it is a beautiful looking Ferrari car. I've got to say, it's probably the best looking Ferrari car since, say, their last championship in 2008. I thought was a very good looking Ferrari. But what does it take when it comes to qualifying to really have a good lap around the Hungaroring? Well, let's get into that quickly. Here is the track map. Obviously, Sector 1 is a pretty simple Sector 1. The corners are, say, slow to medium speed in qualifying trim, but the only, in terms of straight line speed, it's only important straight line speed in Sector 1 because of the two DRS zones and the flat out section on the exit of Turn 2 up to Turn 4. The middle sector is a bit more high to medium speed, and you've got to have good rear end downforce through that sector. And then the final sector, slow speed performance is very, very important, and definitely hitting the apex is very important in the final sector as well. But let's look at an onboard lap of Lewis Hamilton in 2020 to really see how you need to ace this circuit. And let's go on to this onboard lap. This is Lewis Hamilton's pole position lap from Hungary in 2020. This is probably one of the best laps in Formula 1 history that clearly illustrates how this Mercedes car is the best car in Formula 1 history. Absolutely nails the apex of Turn 1. You don't have to necessarily nail the apex of Turn 1, but it is good if you could. And making sure to run as wide down the exit of Turn 2, very important to grab all the extra speed that you can. And then up to Turn 4, obviously you've got to go as quickly into the corner as you can and not run too wide onto the white kind of like sausage curb on the exit. And then you come into this chicane of turn 6 and 7. Very good exit Hamilton gets here. And then through here, yeah, you've got to have good, consistent rear-end downforce to be able to really push the car through these corners. And then that completes the middle sector. Then coming into the final sector, turn 12, got to hit the apex or else you'll run wide and lose so much time on the exit, spinning your rear wheels up. Into this corner, hitting the apex again, very important. And then into the final corner, you've got to carry as much speed into the entry to get as much speed out of the corner as possible and obviously get a good exit. And that is the keys to a good qualifying lap in Hungary. But yeah, let me know, guys, in the chat what you thought of that. And let me know also what you think of the midfield teams and all the teams for this weekend in Hungary and how you think they're looking when it comes to their qualifying pace. Good to see the Pawn bot is here just on time. But yeah, let me read out some further comments if I can. Sparky Pete says, I meant in the race McLaren will fall off a bit. Oh, okay. You should have just specified it and then I would have probably understood it better. But yeah, I think with McLaren, it'll be interesting to see how their race pace is. I mean, obviously they did long runs towards the end of the session, and their long run pace looked pretty good. But the track condition, if it does rain on Saturday, then it's dry on Sunday, which I believe that is what it's going to be. It's going to be a wet qualifying and a dry race on the Sunday, and if that is the case, then the track condition, like I said, will be a bit different to what we expected. So let me just quickly look at the weather forecast for Budapest. And so between yeah, in the morning, tomorrow morning, it will rain quite a bit. Then there'll be a bit of a drier spell. And then it'll rain again in the early to mid part of the afternoon. But if the rain at times looks to be heavy, but not too heavy. So it doesn't look as though it'll be too bad. And then for Sunday, the weather, let's look. So, there could be some rain right as the race starts by the looks of it. So, but definitely less rain about in the Budapest area on Sunday. It does look as though there is rain, definitely, that could hit the track right as the race starts on Sunday. But if it is dry on Sunday, then obviously the track will be in a completely different condition to how it felt in practice too. It effectively will be like a restart or a reset to like it was in as what do you call it? As like it was in practice 1. Sparky Pete also says Mclaren Red Bull were on the pace. No need extra PE or anything for the year. Now both teams are using up extra engines just so they can upgrade later for reliability, which means performance too a lot. And Sparky also says it took McLaren an extra week to dial the upgrade in. Hopefully the Haas does that also. The thing is though, around Spa, because obviously that's the next race on the calendar, but that is in a month's time. This upgrade for the Haas team won't be as effective there as it would be here. So it really needs to be effective here for them to really know how good it is. Frank says, not as good as Nico Rosberg's track reviews, but still great, Chazza. Well, he's obviously not going to be as good as Nico, because obviously he, raced in F1, was an F1 driver, and he does know a lot more about the keys to a good lap around the track, because obviously he's, I think he's had pole position at almost every track on the calendar, or most of the tracks on the calendar, when he was obviously at Mercedes. But, yeah, obviously he drives doesn't he do a Gran Turismo Sport lap around the track? Pretty sure he does. Oh no, he does a Assetto Corsa, I think it is, which is a good racing sim. But yeah, it's also good to show the actual an actual flying lap in an F1 car on board around the track. And Sparky Pete says, awesome videos and graphics, great day show as always, thanks, no problem. And I think, guys, I'll come to the end of this stream, because I've been live for about an hour and 15 minutes, and that's pretty much what I've talked about tonight. Is pretty much all I wanted to get into. So yeah, thanks for coming along to this stream. Make sure, again, if you are watching, still to smash the like button and share this video and channel everywhere you can. But again, just a reminder for tomorrow what the plan is. So if there is no delays to the session, hopefully there's not because of rain, I'll be live tomorrow at 11:45 a.m. UK time, all the way through till about 4:30 p.m. UK time. From 11:45 till 1 p.m. I'll be live for practice 3. From 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. I'll be live for the build-up to qualifying. And then from 3 till 4 p.m. UK time, I'll be live for the, obviously, the session itself. And then I'll be reacting with you guys for about half an hour after the session finishes to what happened in qualifying. And then, of course, on Sunday, I'll be live from 12 p.m. till 5 p.m. UK time for race day. 12 p.m. till 1:30 for the race preview. 1:30 till 4 p.m. for the race watch along. The race obviously starts at 2 p.m. UK time, and then I'll be live for a further hour after the race finishes, no matter when it finishes, to react with you guys to what happened in the race. So make sure, whether you're subscribed or not, to join me for that tomorrow and Sunday. And if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. And again, for everyone watching, don't forget to smash the like button. Don't forget as well to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 and join my Discord server, link below in the description. And don't forget, if you are wanting to watch something this evening, don't forget to also check out my video about why Charles Leclerc, the man on screen, must leave Ferrari at the end of 2024. The link to that video is in the description, guys. But until qualifying day in Hungary, which is going to be quite wet, hopefully not to the point where it's delayed or cancelled, but it's going to be a wet day tomorrow and hopefully a very exciting day. And until then, guys, hopefully you can join for that. Until then, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.